Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dragon Ball Super. Fluff here, coming at you with another deck profile. But before we get into it, make sure to like, subscribe, all that fun YouTubey stuff. You know, we love you, but we're not going to beg for it. You guys love us anyway, right? So we're back from Gencon, and I decided to take Toppo Lock. Kind of a wild card pick. I had been testing a lot for the event, testing against stuff like Soul Striker, SS3 Reboot, Cell Surge, King Cold, Icarus or Kid Icarus, things like that. And I felt really confident with Toppo Lock moving into it. Toppo Lock did have 1 to 2 really bad matchups that if I saw, I just realized that I was going to probably just have those game losses. And those were Mill and Red Universe 7 Vegeta. So just go over my matches real quick. Round 1, I played Jose Maladrano with Cooler Mill. That was pretty decidedly his game. Fantastic game, wonderful guy. Round 2, I played a Red Vegeta player. I can't remember your name. I'm so sorry. Really nice guy. But I ended up getting that match. Round 3, I played Nathan Royce of WOE. Excellent dude. He ended up taking that game. And then the third round was another Red Vegeta Universe 7. It was a Bardock Crew variant. I can't remember your name. So sorry. I lost that one. And then in the 5th round, I played against Red Brawly, which I have a really good match against, so I won that one. So overall, we went X and 3. Kind of bad luck. I had tested a lot against blue, green, black, and yellow, and I knew that red was going to be pretty much an uphill battle, and unfortunately that's all I saw all day. Sucks considering the top table there was no red. So I feel like had I had a better match spread, I would have done a lot better in the tournament. So the deck is really good, and I'll kind of talk to you about the things that I might have changed moving forward. But we've got the Toppo leader. You know it well. You awaken when you've got a specified 2 unison on the field, and then on the backside, while you have a yellow specified 2 unison, each player can only play 1 battle card per turn, and then he gets a draw when you attack. So this is the premise for the deck. It basically creates a lock in which your opponent can only play, you know, a percentage of their total pressure game. So we want to utilize that to create as much advantage as possible. First off, kind of a controversial choice. I only ran 2 Vegeta Unison of Fury. This was basically because Vegeta Unison of Fury was really strong in the last format where Dark Brawly was really strong, and a couple of the other like decks that put out big battle cards for little energy were a lot better. Vegeta Unison of Fury is really great for closing out the game right now. So I did side the other 2 in matches where its effect to keep your opponent from swinging with larger battle cards is a little more relevant, but most decks right now are playing on curve, or the battle cards that they're playing aren't as large, so I didn't see a need to main 4 of them. Instead, I wanted to run something to help me cycle the quality of cards in my hand. So I ran 4 of the Super Saiyan Gogeta Dynamic Unison. This card was great, and it put in a lot of work. It was really hard for my opponents to clear this out. And really the thing that got my opponents through this Unison was on the red Vegeta, being able to give their Unison double strike. I could deal with that pressure for like 3 turns. But after the 4th or 5th turn of that level of pressure where they're ripping 2 markers off and I'm not able to create combo windows, I would eventually lose the Unison. They would spill out the board, and then there was almost no point in me putting a Unison back out because it would just immediately die again. So, you know, that matchup is really bad, and I knew moving in I had to create a way to create counter windows so that I could take advantage of that, which is where Toppo's strength is. So I did run 4 of these. The -4 was not super relevant. You know, most decks, if they rested 2 or knew that they were going to be under that, you know, wouldn't spend a ton of energy moving forward. So just having these were great. I really liked. They were hard against stuff like King Cold. It's almost impossible for King Cold to take this Unison out, and there's a lot of other decks that really struggle with it. So we did run 4 of these. I really like this Unison. Moving into our battle card lineup, I do run 3 Basil Fatal Rampage. This card is good on turn 1. This card is good on turn 7. It's a cantrip that's dual attack, 19,000. if your opponent has 5 or more cards tapped, which is really easy to accomplish in this deck. So we are running 3 of those. I was testing Unite a Symbol, but the card really is not good. Proof that it shouldn't have been banned. So I ended up running 4 Draw Apes instead. There are plenty of turns where we don't want to spend any energy on our turn, but we can just use the draw. So just being able to use this. Plus these are good discard targets for the Gogeta Unison. So 4 of those. If our opponent did try to get kind of wide on us, we ran the Mecha Frieza Robotic Riposte as a floodgate of its own, causing our opponent to tap things. And then that opened up the ability for us to be able to play out Poutines or activate the 5-drop Bergamo if we needed to. But it basically just limited what our opponent is able to do against stuff like the King Cold matchup. This card is pretty bad and usually just gets sided out because they can tap their fields and it doesn't really affect what's happening on the field. So 3 of these at 1-drop negate that kind of limits what your opponent is able to do is really strong. I mentioned earlier that we needed to be able to create combo windows to take advantage. So if our opponent is neurotically swinging at the Unison, you don't get the opportunity to create counter or defensive steps. So I ran 4 of the Vegeta Prideful Transformation. These pretty much put in work in every game except for that red Vegeta match. Because once they get established their Piccolo Unison, you counter with the Vegeta, the Piccolo's Unison resolves, kills the Vegeta, and then you don't have a way to create counters, which is another reason that deck was so good against this deck. Every time that I tried to play a blocker or a token to create more of a defensive window for myself, it just got blown up by the Piccolo's Unison's auto. So it happens, you know, but 4 of these good in every other matchup. Then I ran 3 Raiders Warcry. This card actually did really well, especially in those matchups against the Bardock, or the Bardock crew and Piccolo Unison Vegeta leader. I was able to use this to pressure the leader to get their life force down, especially because once they're at about 5 life, you play this, swing, put some combo pressure on it. It sends them to 3, and then they have to choose to defend. And I was able to sneak through a couple games, and even like when I realized I wouldn't be able to keep a Unison, I was able to turn these into pressure during those games, which got me closer to being able to round out the game. But again, just a bad matchup. But these were really fantastic for draws, tapping, and pressure. Out of the new anniversary box, I do run 2 of the Toppos. Maybe could have run more of these. 2 felt like enough because they do cost you 4 energy. And they can become a double strike crit, 30,000 if you already have a Unison in field. But if you don't have a Unison, you can use this to play a Vegeta Unison of Fury from your hand or deck with 3 markers on it. So this was a fantastic way to kind of recover our Unison while also leaving a blocker on the field. It is deflect, so your opponent can't respond to it, which is absolutely perfect. This card was actually really good, and maybe moving forward, I might take it up to a 3 of. Though I think if I continue to play this deck, it's going to morph into a blue-yellow deck, most likely, just for the additional defense. But at that point, do you even really need to run Toppo? Like, Kid Icarus was so dominant for a reason. It's so resource intensive and resource efficient that at that point, you know, if you're going blue-yellow, it's almost not worth it playing the Toppo at that point. Another finisher was Frieza Divine Transformation. I ran 2. Unfortunately, I didn't draw this card all day. I didn't see it once in any of my matchups except for the mill match where they both got milled. So this card puts in a lot of work. Your opponent can't remove it by skill. To activate a counter, you choose 2 of their cards, and they can't be switched to active mode. It blows up the entire field, ignoring barrier, so that's really good. This card just put in a lot of work. It's a big body blocker. Your opponent can, of course, hit over it, but I love this card. This card puts in a ton, and it does so much for even just 5 energy. And then I played 2 of the Son Goku Return of the Dragon Fist. This was really good for pressuring Unisons or against decks that I knew were going to try to activate battle card skills when I swung. So I would use this. It didn't put in a ton of pressure in the Vegeta U7 matchup, which was, you know, 3 of my 5 matchups. But it was good in the fact that I could swing. It was a double strike body. It was a dual attack if I was able to activate the -2 if I just so happened to have a Unison. Plus it also KO'd all rest mode battle cards. So if they had a field full of Bardock cards, I could play this for 3 energy, blow up their entire field, and kind of halt their pressure moving forward. So 3 of those. Or I'm sorry, it chooses 2 and removes them. I'm sorry. The Vegeta blows up the whole field. This guy removes 2, so you can get rid of like 2 problem cards. Super combos, I ran a spread. I ran 2 Krillin for the draw and then 2 Zamos. I really wanted to play the Zamos because if your opponent swings and you can create a combo step for yourself with a unison on field, you can Zamos, tap their leader, and then they're not able, they lose that 1 extra attack into your unison, which was really relevant. So I wanted 2 of these just for the defense and then the Krillin for the draws. So I ran the spread of the super combos there. 1 cooler, this was for any counters that were really bad, you know, Oceanus, Baby Hatch, Golden Ape, anything like that would create big problems on the field. I ran 1 of. Bergamo, because every yellow deck should run 1. It's kind of hard to find, not as consistent as it used to be, but getting it off feels really good and can really change the tide of a match. My secret rare was Super 17. Because the games go longer, a lot of people were sideboarding stuff like Fu Shrouded Mystery into the deck. And this is one of the cards that can just hit Fu and turn everything off on counterplay. Plus, it can also eat a rest mode card. So if your opponent has a threat on field and plays another card that could potentially be a threat with an incoming battle skill, you can just play this, negate its effects, and then eat the rest moded card. Plus, it is a 40,000 crit body, which is oftentimes pretty relevant for trying to clear out the game. I run 1 Furthering Destruction Champa, just because Champa. We do tap quite a bit in this deck, so I do play 2 Poutine, the Dark Sorcerer. This was really good for stunning the opponent out of games. I had a game where I think I survived something like 16 attacks or something like that, and they played an Overwhelm, and I was able to tap the Overwhelm with the Poutine, which felt really good. 1 Secret Identity, because we do need to control the size of the field, so against decks that want to go large, go wide with a bunch of weenies, this will clean out the field. Plus, it'll get rid of a couple problem cards that are on the field. So one of those is an Overwhelm. Big Overwhelm Ender was Fu Shrouded in Mystery. After playing this card this weekend, it is really good, but one of the problems with Toppo Lock that I had was by the time I got to the point to play Fu, I wasn't able to combo extremely large to finish out the game. So against decks that maintained a lot of hand advantage or a lot of resource efficiency, could just combo out of this guy because you're tapping out to play him on turn 6, or you're waiting until turn 7, which can sometimes be pretty dangerous to do. So maybe moving forward, I would change what this is. I mean, it is a good card. It will for sure at least see a spot in the sideboard, but I think I played Fu in pretty much every match that I had, except for maybe the Cooler Mill match. And I think it closed the game out once for me, you know, and that's just kind of how those games went. But I mean, the card is still fantastic. It gives you a little bit of wiggle room as far as what you're able to do. But where this is a mono yellow variant, if we're tapping out for this, we're essentially defenseless against what our opponent is trying to do. So 1 Fu. Moving on to extra cards, I played 2 Giant Ball. These will tap an incoming card, draw 1, which will help us protect our unison. It gives us something to do on turn 1 unless we're playing a Basil. I run 3 Power of the Super Saiyan. This is all part of creating the combo step. We can use this to tap our opponent's unison down or tap down a battle card. Plus, it gives us a free draw. And then in a pinch, it's a negate. I was running 4, but because this deck is so unison dependent, your opponent will neurotically hit the unison. And if you don't have a way to create a combo window on that unison swing, you basically, these are just 1 negates, which feel kind of bad compared to their activate battle effect. So I was playing it at 4. I cut it down to 3 because we have to create combo windows more than we need to actually negate attacks. Then I did main 3 Frieza Army Reinforcements. This card is really good. One of the big problems is getting yourself down to the 5 life to do it. Usually what happens is you're on about 6. And then your opponent is just neurotically swinging at the unison over and over again, and you can't activate these because maybe you only have 2 energy or you're standing on 1 open energy and you can't activate them. But sometimes people would try to crit you down or take you down to under that 6 life early, which just helps you get these. I think every time someone put me at 5 life before I played the unison, I ended up winning that game. So just something to keep in mind. 3 of these were really good. They did well. They just suck against that Piccolo Unison because you activate them, play the token, Piccolo Unison blows up the token. I mained 2 Nimbus just because of wider matchups that might be able to establish a white board before I get a Unison, or they're able to KO my Unison and then build a large board. We want this to be able to funnel what they're able to do on their crackback turns. And then last but not least, 2 Vegeta's Final Flash. I had a couple instances where people would combo in for game, and I would just plot Vegeta's Final Flash, take 1 damage instead of 2, and that would be it. So that was the main board. Looking at the sideboard that I took, like I said, I was really prepared for blue, green, and black matchups, and I have a pretty good matchup against yellow as is, so I wasn't super worried about that. But this was my sideboard. I would probably change something to help me deal with that red matchup a little bit more, and I don't off the top of my head know what I would do. But we've got 1 cooler. This is just to have another negate in like the blue matchup or a red matchup, something like that. 1 more Flying Nimbus for super aggressive decks. Again, the format's not super aggressive, but Flying Nimbus does sometimes come up. I sided in Tyrannical Blow. This was a lot for decks that have unisons on the field and then want to play, low range. So was pretty good against like the red matchup where they'd play a Bardock's Crew and you Tyrannical Blow and then negate the skill on their unison. So 2 of those. I played, like I said earlier, my other 2 Vegeta Unison of Fury. These did come in those red matchups because it felt good to try to just, kill them with this. Even though this card inherently didn't help me in that matchup, it did help clear those matchups up. 1 more Furthering Destruction Champa. This was again for Unison-based decks, or decks that I needed to be a smidge more aggressive against, so had that. And then I ran 2 Koitsukai. These were for red matchups, green matchups, blue matchups. Cards that really want to play, or decks that really want to play cards during my opponent's turn. Honestly, if I had a choice, I'm probably going to start main decking 1 Koitsukai moving forward, because really every deck plays on your turn as well. So just having this to be able to like get rid of 2 useless cards in your hand and then be able to punish them for doing the things that they want to do feels really good. So I'm going to probably start main decking 1 to 2 of these a turn in each deck. Against blue, we needed Jiren Survival of the Fittest, where we are a more long-winded game. Android 17 Turning the Tide is an instant win condition for the blue deck. So this is the only way that we survive that onslaught from them, because they pay the 7, play the Android 17, we counterplay with Jiren. Now they can't get rid of our hand, but they lose their hand. It's pretty much the way that we survive that game. So 2 of those. And then hand control is definitely a concern. So I sideboarded 3 Deborahs. I never got to bring in the Deborahs because I never saw green. I never got to side in the Jirens because I never saw blue. So, I feel like I adequately prepared for the event. It was just a bad luck in matchups. I'm not taking anything away from anyone that beat me, but if it had shaken out differently, it would have been really interesting to see Toppo against some of those Kid Icarus decks or the hatch decks that topped. So congratulations to everyone at Gencon. It was really awesome to see everyone. Let us know if you went to Gencon, how you did in the comments below. If you plan on participating in any online events, what decks are you planning on taking? What decks are you looking forward to us playing? As always, read your cards, know your plays, let us make the mistakes so that you don't have to, and fluff out.